There's a South Carolina Circuit Court judge named Diane Goodstein. And this woman, like pretty much every judge in America, has recently ruled on a matter involving some Trump policy, and she ruled against him. It wasn't that big a deal, but she did rule against him. She temporarily blocked the state's election commission from releasing its voter files to the DOJ. The DOJ is looking for voter files because they're trying to comply with Trump's executive order to stop non-citizens from registering to vote. Seems like it would make a lot of sense, right? You've got to check the voter rolls, and we're already seeing some voter rolls get purged of illegals, which is good. They have no right to vote. No one can even argue opposite. So in any event, she didn't want to turn over the information, and she said, I'm going to temporarily block this. That was later reversed by the South Carolina Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court there. So whatever. To me, that's your bargain variety legal dispute. She did rule against Trump, but whatever. Then they said, okay, she's been getting death threats. Now, I'm sorry, but death threats for any judge, sadly, in modern day America, are commonplace. I was a practicing lawyer for 10 years. I know about this. Lawyers get them too. And by the way, not for nothing, but also journalists. So it's not that I'm celebrating it or don't have empathy for somebody who receives it, but I always ask the question, what kind of death threats? I mean, if you just seriously go take a look at probably any one of ours, but definitely my Twitter feed, and you see the comments that people post, you'll find a couple. Some rape threats, some death threats, some assault threats. It's crazy, but unfortunately it's out there. But then there's serious death threat. Then there's an elevation of something that's an actual threat. And people around public figures know the difference between the two. So I always want to know, like, what kind of death threats? Somebody online saying, I hope you burn, right? That's not exactly what we're talking about, or like a credible threat. All right, so all that is just to set up what happened here. So this woman says she was receiving some death threats. And then on Saturday, her home caught on fire at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. She was not there. She says she was walking on the beach. You can see in the pictures here that her home is on the water in South Carolina. She wasn't in the home, but her husband, who I think is 81, she's 69, was in the home. He's fine. Everyone is okay, relatively speaking. The husband, who is in his low 80s, was in the house along with, it's unclear to me, but they said 3 people suffered some sort of an injury. It sounds like it was all related to jumping out of the house. Thank God they got out, but like went out on a balcony and had to jump for it. You can imagine if you're 81, that those injuries would be, rather profound. And then it sounds like either their adult children were in the home or possibly their grandchildren, but no one's making too much out of the other injuries. I'm not downplaying the story. I spent some time this morning trying to figure out exactly what the injuries are. And it sounds like the husband was the one with the most significant injuries, and we certainly hope he gets better quickly. Let's see, they said, stand by. Arnie is his name, suffered multiple fractures to his hips, legs, and feet. The judge's son was also hospitalized, though his condition remains unclear. And that dad, the Arnie injuries are the most severe. He was airlifted to the hospital. So that's nothing to shake a stick at. The husband seems really hurt. But thank God they weren't burned to death. I mean, obviously, that or smoke inhalation are the most serious injuries when a fire breaks out. Okay, so that's a tragedy. It's awful, and everybody lives in fear of house fires. However, the story is the lead of our show today because of what happened thereafter, which is a bunch of leftists led by Dan Goldman of Levi's fortune. He's a rich kid who decided to cosplay as a lawmaker. And he ran cover for Joe Biden for 4 years, just was a mouthpiece for whatever Joe Biden said, did not exercise any independent judgment. And he rushes to X, formerly Twitter, to post as follows. Trump, Stephen Miller, and MAGA World have been doxing and threatening judges who rule against Trump, including Judge Goodstein. Today, someone committed arson on the judge's home, severely injuring her husband and son. Will Trump speak out against the extreme right that did this? I mean, there's a lot in there, guys. First of all, how did he know it was arson? And second of all, how did he know whatever happened was committed by the, quote, extreme right? Talk about getting out ahead of your skis. Stephen Miller promptly chastised him, calling him vile, deeply warped, and said that was a libelous madness that he posted. And Dan Goldman doubled down. Try answering my question. If you're trying to combat political violence, why don't you condemn the political violence against a judge who ruled against you and your administration? It's pretty simple. Do you condemn all political violence or only that against your supporters? All right. He wasn't the only one. I'll get to the others in a minute, but I'm just going to start with Goldman. And then you had Monday afternoon and SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, coming out, the chief, Mark Keel, saying there is no evidence to indicate this fire was intentionally set. SLED agents have preliminarily found there is no evidence to support a pre-fire explosion. So no evidence to support a pre-fire explosion and none of arson. Zero. Has Dan Goldman taken down his tweets? No. Has he apologized for them? No. They're still sitting there misinforming whatever number follows Dan Goldman. I didn't bother to look it up. This is an elected U.S. congressman. That's the state of America today, guys, where you're seeing figures on the right wing, very prominent figures, from the Republican nominee in July of 24, Trump, to Charlie Kirk, just last month, being actually assassinated or assassination attempts happening. And as conservatives run around saying, we really, really, really need to talk about why this is happening, and we really would like you to just put some sort of a cap on the incendiary talk about very prominent right-wing figures, especially right now when we're in danger of copycats. We just keep getting told it's both sides. And now they rush to judgment because you could feel, Rich, the excitement on their part that they thought they finally had one. They were thrilled.
Desperate.
They thought they finally had one.
Yeah, hungry for a counter example. Look, two things. One, looked like it was a beautiful home, and that was a no-kidding fire, right? This is not a kitchen fire. People injured, exiting the house. Looked like it burned to the ground. Quite spectacular. But I would just say, we always have to be cautious about jumping to conclusions. No pun intended, obviously. But 11:30 a.m., that's when you said the fire started. It's very unlikely someone's going to go commit an act of arson at 11:30 a.m., daylight hours, middle of the morning, with people in the home, right? It doesn't make any sense. And then there was no perpetrator or suspect. So you're leaping to the conclusion that it's arson. And then you're leaping on top of that conclusion that it was politically motivated arson. And then you're leaping on top of that it was mega politically motivated arson, right? And the only reason you do that is because you're feeling extremely defensive, because there have been these hideous acts of political violence that your own side has committed, and you want to engage in whataboutism or both sidism and use this terrible house fire as an example. He should be humiliated. He should be embarrassed. He should take the post down and apologize to everyone he misled and apologize directly to Stephen Miller. Of course, he'll never do it.
Mm-hmm. And Charlie, it's not just him, of course. Among the others who pushed this lie was Neera Tanden. She's like a bad penny. She just keeps resurfacing in every administration, right? We saw her. She was Biden's director of domestic policy council. This was Neera Tanden after his bad, to put it mildly, June 2024 debate. He's inquisitive, focused. He remembers. He's sharp. That's the honesty level we're dealing with when we talk about Neera Tanden. She was domestic policy advisor for Obama's 2008 campaign. She was domestic policy advisor to Hillary. This woman's just all over Democrat politics. She's a very, very well-known figure on the left. And Neera Tanden retweeted a tweet. It remains up that, reads as follows. A few weeks ago, one of Trump's top DOJ officials publicly targeted this judge. Today, that judge's home is on fire. Neera Tanden retweeted that. By the way, they're talking about Harmeet Dillon. This is how Harmeet Dillon, quote, targeted this judge. After that ruling I mentioned, Harmeet Dillon, who's a perfectly reasonable person, I mean, good luck trying to paint her as an extremist, tweeted out, the Justice Department, Office of Civil Rights, will not stand for a state court judge's hasty nullification of our federal voting laws. I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voter rolls. One citizen, one vote. That's how Neera Tanden, according to the left, somehow incited an alleged arson that didn't take place. And Neera Tanden's post remains up as well. Then she also added, we need to get to the bottom of what happened here. But this happened hours after Stephen Miller attacked judges for insurrection. I mean, the irresponsibility.
Yeah, there are two things about this that annoy me. The first is I really do think that the institutional left has to decide whether or not it's acceptable to criticize judges. I don't like the way that Trump sometimes talks about judges. I don't like the way people around Trump sometimes talk about judges. But that is a consistent view that I have. The left spent the last 4 years suggesting that the Supreme Court was corrupt and illegitimate and needed to be packed. And now every time the Trump administration so much as says that a lower court ruling is wrong, which is fine, then we're apparently living in the final days of the Republic. So that's annoying. The bigger problem here, I think, is that figures such as Neera Tanden live in this little bubble. And as a result, they receive information that is incorrect, and they may never actually see the correction. So it's not just that Neera Tanden has a false impression of what is currently the problem. And I use that word currently advisedly. There is such a thing as right-wing violence. We've seen some of it. We saw January 6th, which was a pretty bad illustration of right-wing violence. But in the last 3 or 4 years, leftist violence has been much worse than right-wing violence. And in the last year especially, the trend is pretty alarming. But Neera Tanden doesn't know that. Neera Tanden, like a lot of people who work in professional progressive politics, simply do not believe that people on their side are capable of committing violence or doing bad things because they're progressives and they're therefore on the side of the angels. So she's primed to see this as violence. The way she talks about it is, well, of course. And then she jumps to this conclusion, and she, and certainly those who follow her, may never know that this wasn't anything to do with politics from all that we know. There are millions and millions of people out there right now who believe that the person who murdered Charlie Kirk was a right-wing groyper. They will believe that forever. There is nothing that will convince them otherwise. For the rest of their lives, that will form part of the political and ideological scaffolding that undergirds their views. Neera Tanden is a perfect example of that sort of person. And that is a very big problem that we struggle with in the modern era.
To your point, I was making this point yesterday. In the mornings, I listen to a bunch of podcasts, including NPR's Up First. I do this so that you don't have to do it. I need to keep an eye on them. I can't stand the podcast. I don't recommend the podcast. I don't like the personalities. I hate the music. The news is biased and almost like a thought bomb that goes off where, like, you know you're corrupting your mind. But literally every day, I get an example of left-wing bias that is so egregious. We talk about them a lot. So people know it's real. They know it's real anyway, but seeing the examples is persuasive. And when the ICE shooter took aim at the Dallas ICE facility and wound up accidentally killing detainees instead of ICE agents, and the very first day that story broke, you may remember, it came out that on the bullet casings, he had written anti-ICE. You didn't really have to try hard to understand what was in his head. It was all there, black and white. But NPR decided to do a story, just like much of the mainstream media, saying, motives are unclear. We really don't know. Okay, except it was literally written there on the bullet casing. It's not like a gum wrapper near the scene, like on the bullet casing. We may never know. It's unclear. So the next day, it comes out, this guy had written all sorts of notes at his personal residence where they found it, attacking ICE agents as guilty of human trafficking, saying the people who are at that facility are nothing but folks showing up to collect a dirty paycheck. Then there was a handwritten note recovered by investigators that read, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with armor-piercing rounds on that roof? I'm sorry, Charlie, but how much more clear can you get? Did you know gold is up around 40% this year? That's not speculation, it's reality. And if a portion of your savings is not diversified into gold, you are missing the boat. Here are the facts. Inflation is still too high. The US dollar is still too weak. And the government debt is still growing. This is why central banks are flocking to gold. They're the ones driving prices up to record highs. But it's not too late to buy gold from Birch Gold Group and get in the door now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into one in gold. You don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. The best indicator of the future is the past, and gold has historically been a safe haven. Text MK to 989898 right now to claim your free info kit on gold. MK to 989898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.